So,
yes.
Minister, I'm hoping to ask 3 specific questions and you might answer them, and I'll put them as quickly as I can. The 3 questions, 2 are very practical questions. What engagement has your department had with the Department of the Gaeltacht in relation to the aftermath of the decision to close the Irish colleges, affecting 40 colleges, 700 families and 27,000 students? And I don't think, my question, I understand from replies to Dáil questions, Minister, that you were going to look at adapting the existing packages in relation to picking up the consequences of that. Number 2, the question is in relation to protective equipment. And thank you to the Parliamentary Budget Office, which I read, and they point out that Ireland relies heavily on other countries for PPE. And my specific question to you is, given that Ireland imported €340 million more PPE products than it exported, making it the 7th largest trade deficit for PPE in the EU, what is the Department's plans, or what are the plans to make us, if not self-sufficient, to go along that road? Indeed, I have 2 masks in my bag here, and I mentioned them. I don't wish to put them out as a gimmick, but to point they're actually works of art made by a woman in Galway for a nursing home. So there's fantastic goodwill on the ground. My final question is in relation to small to medium enterprises, and you will see I've asked a question there specifically. You can read it, but in terms, I read the financial notes from the Central Bank last week, the 2 notes that came out, and they point out that non-agricultural small to medium businesses employ more than 1 million. And they point out, looking at various indices and criteria, that the requirement for liquidity is going to be between 2.4 billion and 5.7 billion. Now, they look at that in terms of the existing costs, in terms of rent, rates, utilities, and if the companies can reduce that, and then this still will be. Now, I'm a little concerned, Minister, and I welcome your department's approach to date, particularly with the help for employers. But I'm afraid your comments today that you go to the bank first, really, I think the department should read what the Central Bank had said, and I don't always agree with them, but they talk about the non-availability of loans from the bank for quite a number of these companies. And they also point out about the cascading effect from those further up the chain, not affected by COVID, because they can't supply and can't get money from the lower down. I don't mean lower down in that way, but further down the supply chain. So quite clearly, there's a need for a new roadmap in relation to how we're going to give liquidity to small businesses. Now, I come from Galway, and it's absolutely despairing to walk the streets as it is with other towns and cities, and business have been very good in complying with all of the measures that need it, but they do need hope at this point. And you mentioned the suspension of rates. We need more than the suspension of rates. We need a plan that allows the businesses to come back, but in a sustainable manner. I'll just leave you a little time to answer, because my colleague has the last 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Deputy, and thank you for raising those issues. Just to be clear, I did announce 2 weeks ago €1 billion worth of liquidity and grant supports for businesses, and there's a big long list of all the various supports that are available out there. So we are looking at another package of supports, and we will be announcing them in due course, and I'm working with Minister Donoghue on that. Of course, the first was the initial shock, and it's over €4 billion worth of supports in terms of the wage subsidy scheme and the increased pandemic unemployment payment. So that's already available, and we have to look obviously at how we can reboot companies, get them back up and running, because at the end of the day, that's what we all want. We want to get businesses back and people employed, and get back to full production as quickly as possible. But it's not just going to be as easy as switching on a light. We're going to have to work with companies, and they're going to have to try and ramp up their production, but those that have gone on to the wage subsidy scheme at least will have that connection with their workers. The Department of the Gaeltacht, just to say that we are engaging with the Minister Kine, the Minister for the Gaeltacht, and we're looking at the issues for Bannaty and the communities there as well. And just to say that all of the supports that are available across the board to all of the other companies are available to the Gaeltacht, to companies in the Gaeltacht area. Regarding the PPE, there's approximately 100 Enterprise Ireland companies that are producing for different products to cope with COVID-19. And only yesterday I was in Combilift in my own county. They have developed a splitter machine, which means that one ventilator can serve up to 6 patients, and you can deal with each patient individually. So that's what you call innovation, and they have written the programmes, and they've been working with the HSE over the last 4 weeks. It started off where they wanted to see how they could help, so it has now developed into a really good prototype that's been tested, working with the HSE, and they're actually looking at that this could help. We have enough ventilators in this country, but there are going to be developing countries out there that probably won't have the funding to buy maybe all the ventilators they may possibly need. So this here means one ventilator and 6 patients, and they can deal with each one individually. So that's an example. And Enterprise Ireland, Enterprise Ireland are supporting companies right across the country in how they can change. And I had better mention Carrick Gin in Monaghan as well. They are now making hand sanitisers.